Okay, doesn't matter what type of paper you use. I am going to use a pencil to start. Hopefully you can see. Basically, here's my piece of paper that I have. I'm going to go ahead and draw starting towards the top. I don't know if you can see how close I am to the top. I'm about an inch down. I'm going to draw kind of like a curvy line. I'm going to do that 5 more times. So let me move my water out of the way. We're going to do it 5 more times. So my second one's going to be kind of close. Third one's going to be a little bit farther away. That's 3. I got to do 4 and 5. The next thing I have to do is actually put in some shrubbery. Shrubbery is just a fancy word for some bushes. So I'm going ahead and I'm adding some bushes. Don't worry guys, it's going to be a lot easier to see in just a minute. Okay, so now that I'm happy with those basic first lines, I'm going to go back with my Sharpie marker. I'm going to trace my very first line. I'm going to trace my second line. Trace my third line. As you can see, I'm going outside the lines a little bit. That's because I can always erase before I do the painting part. And here I'm going to do my last line and go ahead and trace some of all this shrubbery, or what you want to call is bushes. You don't have to put this part in, but you can if you want to. Before I go any farther, I am going to quickly erase any lines that I don't like. I'm not going to be too picky about it, but I just want to kind of erase anything that might show up in my finished artwork. So I pull it off, shaky, 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 and I'm back. Now let's draw the waterfall. So we're going to start with markers, and I'm going to start towards the top. So this is the top of mine. I'm going to go ahead and draw in the center something that's going slightly at an angle. You don't want it to be too much. Now when I go to my second section, I'm going to scoot over a little bit. Not crazy, just a little bit, and continue getting bigger and bigger. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to scoot over just a little bit and get bigger and bigger. You can already see where this is going. Scoot over a little bit. Basically, because every time I scoot over a little bit, that's the water going over the waterfall. And do it again. And when I get to the bottom here, basically, it's going to run into the bushes. Okay. I wish I could show you the whole thing at one time, but I still haven't figured out my whole setup. So let's go back, and then at the top, what I went ahead and did is I just put some mountains in. Okay. The next thing what I do, you can use crayons. I happen to use oil pastels. I use my little Faber-Castell set. There's 12 of them in there. I'm just going to take the blues, and I'm just going to do some wave lines. Same thing, wavy lines. I'm not being too particular. I'm just kind of, now I'll get my light ones. Do the same thing, put some water lines in there just to like represent that the water's moving, that there's movements. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and remember that shrubbery at the bottom? I'm just going to make it a little more fancy before I do the next step. And I'm just going to kind of make some bumps. And I have another green, so I'm going to do the same thing. You don't have to do it this way. You can go ahead and use color pencils or crayons or paint, whatever you prefer, and to do this reaction. Now I'm going to do the same thing Oops, I just broke my oil pastel. Yes, oil pastels are a lot softer than crayons. So it's very, I'm never upset when something like that breaks on accident. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put some more movement lines in there. You'll see what I mean in just a second, why I'm putting these movement lines in. And I'll put some black ones in because, you know, these are mountains. Now, why am I doing it all like this? Well, the finished product that I used this time was with paint, okay? See if you can see it. There's my bushes down at the bottom. You see the mountains at the top. You see the sky. You see the different levels. And you went ahead and saw that. So we're gonna go ahead and put that to the side right now. You do not have to use watercolors. I just got a set of watercolors. It's an old set that I have. And I'm just gonna use one brush. And what you're gonna, if you have the Crayola set, that's fine. I mean, that's fine. We're gonna start with this one section here. I need more water. Get some more water on there. Now I have enough water. And I'm gonna start building up. See how it almost looks like flames? That's layers of watercolor. So I'm not painting the whole section to start. I'm really not. And I'm not going constantly back to get more paint on my brush. I'm using up every little bit on my brush. Then I can go back and I'm gonna go, I just happen to have a darker color blue. So I'm gonna go ahead and when you're talking about shading and when things should be darker, the darker colors are always towards the bottom. So if this is where the water goes over the hill, you want to make sure the darkest part is right there. So I am just adding some of my dark blue at the bottom. Not worried too much about anything. And now I'm just getting plain water. The one thing I notice a lot is with watercolors, people use way too much. I'm gonna get a bigger brush. This brush is pretty small. I'm gonna get a bigger brush. Where's a bigger brush? Sorry guys, I didn't mean to leave you hanging. I'm coming. Okay. This is a little bigger brush. And you want to make, the thing with watercolor is sometimes I think we use way too much paint, not enough water. So towards the top, I'm just using water to blend in with the paint I already painted. Since the paint is water soluble, which means it becomes alive using water, you can always reactivate it. I can add some more in with a little bit of water. Now that's that one. Now if I do the second one, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna start with the darkest right at this line. So my darkest color that I'm getting is gonna be right at this line. And I don't want it too perfect. I'm just like pushing my brush. It almost looks like fire. Water fire, imagine that. So it almost looks like fire. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna get some of my medium blue. See how juicy my paint is? When it dries, it will dry completely, and then your watercolor will look a whole more realistic and different because you do have those other dimensions. I actually want to leave a little bit of white spaces. You can do that because the sun would be hitting. Now when I go to do, sorry, I'm trying to move my paper. If I wanted to do the ground on the outside, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead And just kind of, that's like a red brown. It's like Georgia clay. And then I'm gonna go and I'm gonna get some my lighter brown, which is almost like a tan. Oops, don't go into the water. And finally, I think I'm gonna grab some of my darker brown color. Just put, oops, that didn't really take. Basically, you can just have fun with watercolors. That's why my favorite is watercolors, is because it's just amazing what happens. Now I've got little puddles, and when they dry, they're gonna become the darker parts, because you definitely wanna see some darkness. Now remember what I talked about every time you went over a hill? That's where your darkest area should be. So I'm gonna keep going back. Now, of course, you don't have to, if you don't have watercolors, you don't have to use watercolors. You can do crayons, you can do color pencils, you can do markers, whatever you prefer. I'm gonna show you just different things each Wednesday when I release a new lesson that you can try, but you can always put your own spin on it. Okay, putting some, okay, so that, you guys get the idea. You're not gonna watch me paint the entire thing. So let's go back to the one I did do, okay? Again, with the watercolors, you want to make sure you show dimension, which is the darkest parts, which you make sure you add more paint up here. I basically washed my brush with plain water and just brought some of the paint up. Same thing with the mountains. I wasn't too worried about it. I wanted to have those different colors to represent the texture. We didn't talk about the bushes at the bottom, but obviously I painted those green. Those little lines that I put in earlier with the oil pastels, you can see them. Not as much as I would have liked, but you can see those lines. And the mountains, I always think of Purple Mountains Majesty. So when I make my mountains, I usually put some kind of purple in it. Not that that's a realistic color, but that's just kind of an artistic choice. Remember, we all have our artistic licenses. I always put Purple Mountains in there because I don't know, that's just what I like. And then I went and got my lightest blue and went ahead and did some sky. Now, if you want to do something else to make it even more realistic, you could put a little white paint, go back with a little bit of white paint and paint on top of the mountains. And you can do a little splatter paint to give the waterfall some splashes, especially at the bottom. Now, I haven't done that yet, so I don't know if I can get it to work real quick while I'm here. Let's see if I can get the little white to work. I don't know. So I've got my brush loaded with white paint, and I'm just gonna, it's there, I can see it. These are basically the splashes that waterfalls create when they're coming on their way down. Those are a little better. Those are getting bigger. Okay, you can keep working on that until you're happy. You can always go back if you want to and add some white at the bottom. And this is just white watercolor. Just so it looks like there's like a foam at the bottom. And you can always go back and make it as light as you want it to do. But again, this is our Purple Mountain Majesty. Trying to get the whole picture in here. You'll see my crazy setup for this. But you see it, the water, it's almost like a cut-off triangle. Every time you hit one of those 5 lines, you bring the line a little bit wider. So each time I went over that one of those lines, I got a little bit wider each time. Bottom, just put some bushes or anything else that you'd prefer. Mountains up there. If you'd rather do trees. But I think this is a really easy, fun way to do a waterfall that we can go ahead, we can go ahead and use for our Earth Day project. So this is our second week's lesson. Once you go ahead and finish, why don't you take a picture of it and send it to me my way via my email or on, sorry guys, or on the Google Classroom. I would just love to see what kind of stuff you create. All right, for now, I'm gonna let you go and I will see you next week. Bye.